International assets and offshore accounts are one of the most difficult parts of a high net worth divorce because you're dealing with laws in other jurisdictions. So we usually have to bring in an attorney or different professionals from that particular jurisdiction if we have difficulties in either valuation of it or in obtaining the records. Most of the time we can get records through the other party because the judge can hold them in contempt for failing to provide those records. But one worry that we have is that what if those are false records? How do we know? How do we really know? We have to get them from the company itself. So do we get a release from that particular company and then have the other side ordered to sign that release, and then we send that release to them that releases the records directly from the company? A record directly from that company is going to be more reliable, although not necessarily always, because one of the reasons why the accounts are set up offshore could be because they'll fake accounts or different things like that. So we haven't had that problem much, but it's a theoretical possibility and one of the things that we wind up trying to check for. But essentially, we've got to determine what's there. And then we've got to determine, well, are we willing to take that? And can we take it? And how do we get that transferred into our client's name if it's going to be part of an agreement? Or what happens if the judge orders it to us? I need to know if I'm going into court ordering, I want that account, or we can't take that account, give that account to them, give us this other stuff that's more solid to us that's in the United States and more accessible than that judge. If you order that to be paid to our client, that our client will actually get it. Because there's a difference between getting something, permission or order, piece of paper saying you're supposed to have something, and then actually getting it and enforcing it and receiving that. So there's a big difference between the two. And I am going to want something ordered that I know I have a better chance of receiving. So if you've got stuff that's offshore or accounts like that, or a rental or piece of real estate in Italy or wherever around the world, when we've dealt with stuff all over the world, Italy, Africa. Africa's really tricky because some of those nations are, like you're dealing with like permission from a tribe. And, if they divorce, the tribal law takes over. You have to know and understand all those different things. So you really need to get somebody that's experienced in that. And it's complicated, but doable. Stock options and retirement plans, really got to denote those separately. Stock options, they have a value today, but if they're vested versus unvested, sometimes a stock option, you have a period of time during the marriage and maybe a time before the marriage when they were issued, then a time during the marriage, and then a time after the marriage. There's multiple formulas for that are used to determine what proportion of the stock option is community property and what portion is separate property. So we have to analyze that, determine the amounts there, and then agree upon the amount of the community property that is divided. Separate property you could give by agreement, but the court has no jurisdiction to divest a spouse from separate property. So it's complicated, but we basically value the option and we value it based on how much it's going to be when it actually vests or whether the option is exercised. So complicated, but definitely doable. With retirement accounts, the value, you have to first determine how much of that account was separate property versus community. If it's all earned during the marriage, then it's all community. But if part of it was earned before the marriage, then you got a mixture of separate property and community property inside the same account. So we have to determine and separate out what is community versus separate. And it's tricky because you may have single stocks or different items that, you may have shares of Walmart stock that you were bought before the marriage and shares of Walmart stock after the marriage, and they have different cost bases for those, and then therefore different tax consequences. So we've got to go in and really thoroughly analyze that account and determine which proportion. Or we could just say, well, this much was done prior to the marriage, this much done after, and we can ballpark it. Depends on how much the amounts are. Depends on how worth it is for you to spend $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 to try and trace all of that account out, or more. The bigger the account is, the more tracing and the more complicated that it is. We've done these on multi-million-dollar accounts, and you can spend a couple of basis points doing this transaction. So we kind of balance out the amount of work and transaction costs versus the value of really having it exactly precise, or sometimes good enough is good enough. We know we're kind of in the ballpark. We're horse trading other things that are potentially different values. And so somebody has a preference for this, somebody has a preference for this, and we get them to agree and they're happy with it. Anywhere along the spectrum of them agreeing to be happy versus, oh, we have to be precise. And sometimes it's people's personality types. You know, sometimes people are like, it has to be done the right way. And then other times it's like, well, it's better if we, just do it like this and divide it some sort of way. So it's very variable. It's all negotiation, but retirement accounts can be very, very complicated. Please don't try and do that yourself. There's also tax benefits. For example, if you were to withdraw money out of a retirement account early versus waiting till the retirement age, you would pay a 10% penalty and the taxes. But if, as part of the divorce, we swap the names and we transfer from one name to the other of either one account to this one, and then when they withdraw that, there's a thing called a Qualified Domestic Relations Order, QDRO. Quadro is what we call that. So if you have a quadro, you do the quadro correctly, it avoids the 10% penalty. Well, if you're deciding to withdraw $100,000 out of that account, the penalty is $10,000. Well, we've just paid for ourselves just knowing to do that versus not. Another reason why you make sure you get an attorney if you're dealing with that. They're very complicated, but that's why you need an attorney to do it. Forensic accountants are critical in certain cases. In cases where there's money missing, or cases where we have to do extensive what's called tracing, meaning that there's a mixture of separate property and community property. Separate property is things that you own prior to the marriage. Community property is anything obtained during the marriage. If you got one account that has all that mixed in, a forensic accounting will have to separate that out and determine how much is separate and how much is community. And that valuation can make a big difference in a property division settlement, whether it's done by agreement or done by court order. The other time is that if there's things missing. So we will look through the bank accounts and say, well, hey, you were supposed to provide us all the accounts. You gave us Capital One and you gave us Chase Bank, but we see some transfers here to Bank of America for $50,000 worth of these transfers. Where's the Bank of America account? Where's that money? Oh, I was hiding that. So you've got to, it helps us to find hidden assets, or when people, either from dishonesty, which happens, or from sheer, you know what, I'm sorry, I forgot. Yeah, I do have that account. It happens. So critically important, not used in every case, because a lot of times we're looking through that ourselves, but occasionally it's very important to find those hidden assets if you're certain that they're there, or even if you suspect they're there. Sometimes it's that they let us know that, look, we've traced out everything and they're not hiding money. If they did, they earned the money in cash. They won the money in cash, have spent the cash. We can't find it. We don't see any property that they would have bought with the cash. We just don't think that there's anything there. So sometimes it gives you the peace of mind to know that they're not cheating you. And other times they gives you the peace of mind to know that they found some stuff and your case just got a whole lot better. High asset, high net worth, high earning divorces, you've got to find the right attorney. And we're happy to help you with that. Go to softdivorce.com, healthydivorce.com, harddivorce.com. It all leads to getting you through the divorce process in the healthiest way possible.